La ambasada Suediei am ajuns tocmai în momentul în care angajații s-au întrunit la una dintre cele mai importante etape de peste zi. Se numește fika. Este o tradiție suedeză.
I think everybody here is vaccinated and I hope everybody feels healthy.
Pandemia a cam rărit întrunirile fika și le-a mutat în mare parte online, dar angajații au făcut o excepție odată ce am venit noi în vizită.
We are working in shifts here at the embassy, and this is half of the crew that you see here around the table, and the rest are working from home. So these are the lucky one who gets fika today.
Și mâine la fika vine altă jumătate de echipă?
Well, we'll see if there's any leftovers. Otherwise, I have to go home and bake again. Yeah.
Povestiți-ne ce este acest obicei.
There's always a good reason to have a fika. You can have a fika in the morning, you can have a fika before lunch, you could have a fika as lunch if you like, you can have a fika in the afternoon, even after dinner you can have another fika. The purpose is to gather around a piece of sweet coffee or a tea, and I think it's been part of both our private lives, but also now in Sweden it's also a very important part of the public and the business life. This is where we meet up in a more relaxed way to share information about our families, if we like, of course, so discuss the weather. But then sometimes you also get into work issues and you find actually those creative solutions and see the synergies between what we're working. So it's something very productive as well. You might find it a little bit lazy to go and have a fika, but usually it ends up with even better ideas. So it's
like a brainstorming.
Yes. You can brainstorm about the latest films, the movies, or you work-related issues, and it's just having a good time together and see what comes out of it.
În timpul pandemiei v-ați întâlnit mai rar, dar acum este posibil pentru că lumea este vaccinată, da?
Since I only arrived here in September, I haven't been here for the really rough times. In September things were easing up a little bit, and then we had the backlash the last month. So I think for the first time in September we had the opportunity to meet as an embassy as a whole for the first time for over a year. Some colleagues met for the first time actually. So we have two shifts taking turns to ensure that we are keeping distances, use the masks when we can, and this is despite that everybody has been vaccinated. Because we can still get the virus and we can still spread it, but we really like to be cautious about it. So this is really an exception from the rules. These days our fikas are virtual, so everybody brings their own and we sit behind the screen, but this is so much nicer when you can do it in person. It's a special moment for you.
Thank you. Era rândul ambasadoarei Katarina Frid să aducă prăjiturile la fika și o surpriză pentru colegii săi a fost că ea le-a și copt.
So this is the tradition is, I mean, if you go way back in time, you're supposed to have 7 kinds of cakes for a fika. I'm sorry, I was a little bit lazy, so you only got 4.
This is made by you.
I have to try to be polite.
You can buy it, but it's considered more nice if you make it yourself, of course.
Katarina Frid este noua ambasadoară a Suediei în Republica Moldova și și-a început misiunea în septembrie, după ce predecesoarea sa, Ana Liberg, și-a încheiat mandatul. Doamna ambasadoră, ați venit în Republica Moldova la începutul lunii septembrie și colegii mi-au suflat că a fost chiar prima dată când ați ajuns în Republica Moldova. La câteva săptămâni după asta, ambasada a emis un comunicat foarte călduros și departe de stilul oficial, în care a spus că doamna ambasadoare a întâlnit aici vreme frumoasă, parcuri verzi, mâncare delicioasă și oameni prietenoși. Povestiți-ne despre această perioadă.
Thank you so much for the question. It was a marvelous time. It still is, I have to say. I didn't get the opportunity to come and visit Moldova before because of the COVID pandemic. So this was really my first impression coming in September. With my family, we were traveling down by car and entering through Romania and coming into this very lush and beautiful country coming forward. And I think that I was quite overwhelmed during the first 2 weeks by the beauty of the country and the beauty of the people. It was a very intense period here. You had a new government. There was a lot of positive energy in the country. The COVID pandemic was going down a little bit and people were really going out and being alive, I think. And I felt that energy also coming here. And is really been coloring my time here in Moldova. I think, it's a beautiful time to come to Moldova in September. You have all these parks, you have all this very nice nature, and the people are warm and very generous and welcoming. So I really enjoyed those first, what do you call it, when you really get in the first crush in this love affair of mine with the country of Moldova.
Ce știați despre Moldova înainte de a veni aici și dacă s-a schimbat impresia dumneavoastră? Iată, ați ajuns, ați descoperit poate altceva.
Well, since I got the information that I was coming here to Moldova, of course I was studying up. Unfortunately, there's not too many books about Moldova in English, so I tried to find information from various sources. And I think that what struck me was, of course, the complex history of this country, coming all the way back from when it was created, and the various complexities in the political structures in the region. But looking at the present Moldova, I think what was striking is the people and how you've been coping with all the challenges that are thrown at you, and that it still has so much energy in this country. I think was the thing that I was taking with me from this.
Ce știu suedezii despre Moldova? Dacă știu ceva, în afară de faptul că este undeva o țară foarte mică între România și Ucraina.
Well, to be very honest, Moldova is not very well known in Sweden. I think we need to work on that. But it has been given increasing attention, I think, during the last years. I think people in Sweden are becoming more aware of Moldova, and particularly of the wine industry in this country and the tourism sector in this country. Previously, perhaps what made headlines was the situation in Transnistria, and more from a conflict angle. But now we have, I think, been a lot of coverage from Moldova since the change of government and the very EU-oriented policies that they are taking has opened up also for an interesting in the Swedish population towards this country. So I hope that this is going to grow even further, and that we will be able to showcase Moldova even more, even in Sweden, because I think that we have a lot of things in common as people. Going back already from the beginning of the 18th century, when Sweden was actually ruled from Moldova. So there's a lot of history that links our countries together that we could explore, and I think many Swedes would find Moldova as fascinating as I am.
Nu pot să nu remarc faptul că Suedia trimite din nou o femeie în calitate de ambasador în Republica Moldova, dar noi ne-am obișnuit cu faptul că diplomația este reprezentată în mare parte de bărbați. Și aici mă refer în special la misiunile diplomatice ale Moldovei, dar și ale altor state în Republica Moldova.
Well, in a sense, I think it's a coincidence, because in Sweden we have 50% more or less of the ambassadors are women. So we have been lucky to have 4 women here in Moldova, me included. But I think that there's no specific tactic behind it. I know that globally the numbers are quite bleak. It's only 15% that are female ambassadors. But there's definitely, you can see that there's definitely scope for more female ambassadors. But in the Swedish system, we've been working hard on this with the appointments, and now we are very pleased to see that we have more or less a gender balance when it comes to the appointment of ambassadors going forward.
Recent, Magdalena Andersson a fost realeasă în funcția de șef a guvernului. În afară de asta, cât de mult ocupă în Suedia femeile funcții cheie în stat sau în instituții foarte importante?
We have been working very hard for gender parity in Sweden for quite some time. I think it was exactly 100 years ago, 1921, that we were first allowed to vote to the parliament in Sweden. And it took us 100 years before we were able to elect our first female prime minister. So very happy to see that happening this week. And following Moldova's example, having both a female president and a female prime minister, I think that we're very honored to be able to join that club of having female leaders. In general, I think we have a good of female role models among the leadership in various sectors in Sweden, but still there is room for improvement, particularly perhaps within the private sector, in the different boards. you can see that there's still an imbalance between the male and female and how much they are participating. So, we have been working very hard to also find, the underlying systems that you need to be able to work and take on a leadership position, having a career that makes you end up in that. And that goes everything from having the right to decide over your own body to having daycare for your children and everything that you're supporting the family around to enable both the mother and the father to go on and have a career on an equal terms.
Unul dintre pilonii de bază în susținerea acordată de către Suedia Republicii Moldova este egalitatea de gen, iar iată unul dintre cele mai recente proiecte implementate este această campanie împotriva violenței față de femei care a durat 16 zile. De ce a fost aleasă anume această direcție?
I'm very proud to be able to represent the feministic government and we have a feministic foreign policy. And this is because we do recognize that there are severe inequalities globally when it comes to the relation between men and women. And for us, this is not a question only about rights, it's also a question of what's smart. If we do not use the full potential of our population, we will lose out on so much creativity and so much good ideas that could further develop our societies. So for us, it's been key to have this as a fundamental pillar of everything that we do. It goes from deciding on what we are funding, it goes to see what we are funding and how that affects the population, to have that kind of gender analysis going forward, to ensure that whatever we do, it's actually strengthening both sexes and the country in the end to develop further. So for me, that's it's something that I have in my spine, so to say. This comes very natural for everyone to stand up for the equal rights of men and women, girls and boys going forward.
De ce sunteți atât de preocupată de acest domeniu personal?
Well, I think, of course, it could be easy to say it's because I'm a woman and I see that this is necessary. But I think it goes much deeper than that. I really believe that we are all equal and we should all have the same opportunities and all the same rights. So for me, as by education, I was studying human rights a long time ago, and this has really been something that I think should be coloring everything that we do. And this is so fundamental that we should not have any discrimination of any kind. We should have all the same opportunities going forward. So for me, it's more than work, it's a passion to ensure that we actually do our best to ensure that we can use the full potential of our population and everyone have the opportunity to develop their full potential as good as they can.
În Republica Moldova, violența împotriva fetelor și a femeilor și mai ales abuzul în familie este una dintre problemele sociale cele mai grave pe care Moldova nu poate să le depășească de ani de zile. Cum este acest lucru în Suedia și cum vedeți situația aici?
Unfortunately, this is a phenomenon that is global. There is no country that is completely saved from violence against women. And too many women are losing their lives every day due to someone they have been trusting as a family or a close relative. And we need to stop this. From a Swedish perspective, this also comes back to gender equality. This is structural problems that we need to address. It's not a thing that is happening within the family. It's something that the government needs to engage in to ensure that we stop. It goes all the way from engaging all the various sectors in the society that is getting in contact or should be in contact with these issues to ensure that we also have the resources set aside to address this issue and to work really from an early age with the norms and the stereotypes that we are instilling in children to ensure that they are aware that this is not normal. This is not something that should be tolerated. It actually has to stop right here and right now. So this is another passion of mine, that we really need to fight this at all levels, and we can only do it together. We need to have the men and boys engaged in this, otherwise we will never succeed. But we also need the government to stand up for this.
Dar iată, în Republica Moldova s-au făcut câțiva pași. Recent a fost semnată Convenția de la Istanbul. Avem deja femei în funcții foarte importante, președinte, prim-ministru și instituții importante sunt conduse de femei, cum ar fi Curtea Constituțională. La nivel de rând, însă, problema rămâne destul de acută și asta o demonstrează studiile care spun că, practic, fiecare al 10-lea om din Republica Moldova consideră că femeia trebuie să stea în continuare la bucătărie, iar violența rămâne o problemă. Ce credeți că nu se face până la capăt?
It's hard to say what one could do more. One can always do more to address these issues. I think, first of all, one has to realize that there is so much more potential in half of the population than keeping them in the kitchen. So I think we really need to explore that potential as well. Secondly, I think this is something you really have to start talking about with children from a very early age, to ensure that they also have a broad perspective of their opportunities, both boys and girls, and including on how they could relate to each other. It's a question of giving the boys also good role models on how they could become men and have be very safe in their role as men, without having taken the negative advantages of women in any kind. And as you have here in Moldova, you have really strong female role models already. You have a female president, a female prime minister. You have so many females in leading positions in the society. So I hope that with time, even young girls will see that this is actually something I also can do. And with time, also their families will then also see this is something that my daughter could do. She could be the next president or the next head of this corporation or the head of whatever, and back them up in that with education that is allowing them to fulfill their full potential going forward. So we have to work with the norms, and we need to ensure that our education system is fit for this. And then over time, I'm sure that we will have a better situation that we have globally in Sweden and in Moldova.
Care sunt alte proiecte pe care Suedia urmează să le implementeze în Republica Moldova?
Well, we are working with a multi-year strategy for our development cooperation. And we are actually now ending this present strategy period this year, and we're hoping for a new 7-year long strategy beginning of next year, hopefully. We have 3 focus areas. One is focusing on human rights, democracy, and rule of law. Here we have a lot of interesting projects going on. For instance, trying to work with the communities on both sides of the River Dniester to work in various ways to strengthen human rights components in their lives. We also have another field which is focusing on economic integration, where we also have a lot of different activities, where some of them are focused on innovation. We have a very newly launched project together with the Americans called Future Technology Activities, which we were very proud of, which is going to run for 5 years, and we really hope will help Moldova to bring their innovation work to the next level. We have also another field that we're working within the environmental and climate field, and here we have also interesting work. We also try to tie our work together with the other fields. So, for instance, we're working on strengthening the implementation of environmental legislation and working on that together with partners. We are very much relying on excellent cooperation with the civil society here in Moldova, but also international partners. And we do this also, of course, in consultations with the government to ensure that we are assisting in the best way possible in Moldova's plans and priorities going forward.
Ce buget aveți planificat pentru toate aceste acțiuni? Pentru că, până la urmă, e vorba de proiecte în care Suedia investește bani.
We are spending 13 million euros a year in Moldova within the present strategy. We haven't received the frames for the coming strategy period, but I hope that it definitely is going to be matched that, and perhaps even a little bit more.
Da, ce așteaptă Suedia în schimb de la Republica Moldova?
Nothing, to be honest. No, but we do hope that our money will be well spent to ensure that it benefits the people of Moldova in the best way. We would like to continue our good partnership with Moldova. We really like to build on our joint relations. We would like Moldova to prosper, and we would like to see Moldova, the people of Moldova, benefit from this assistance. Our international cooperation is not used as a means for getting anything in return. The purpose is to help the people that we are here to work with and partner with to see how we can be our best assistance going forward.
De ce întreb? Pentru că întotdeauna anumite proiecte vin și cu anumite condiții care trebuie să fie respectate.
Well, I mean, condition in the sense that we do hope that the resources will be managed prudently, that we will not be having any corruption that would deviate the resources to something that they were not aimed for. So we would have conditions in the sense when it comes to reporting back to us on how the means have been used in a good way, and that they are used for the purpose that we have jointly set for the project.
Corupția este o mare problemă în Republica Moldova. Există corupție în Suedia?
I think I would be foolish to say no. I'm certain that there might be cases of corruption in Sweden. It's not common. We're doing fairly well when it comes to these kind of transparency indexes and so forth. But there is always the possibility that it exists. And I think that the most important part is that we have systems that can react when this kind of corruption occurs, and that there are consequences for those concerned, and that you remedy whatever has happened. So yes, most likely there is corruption in my country, but we do really work hard to ensure that we have the system in place to address it.
Dar cum credeți că funcționează aici sistemul în acest caz, din primele dumneavoastră observații?
My understanding is that there is quite a lot of problems with corruption in Moldova. And I do take it that the new government has this as its main priority to address, and we are definitely there to help them in this endeavor. I think corruption is such a scourge that it really drains a country's potential to develop as a country. So you really need to put all your efforts in there to do your best to stop it. I think, of course, corruption is for the better one of a few, but the costs for the system as a whole, I think it should be taken into consideration by the people that are engaged in this, because it's so heavy. I mean, if you would not have a corrupt society, the investment would come flowing and you could have another kind of development going forward.
Într-o perioadă în care statele au devenit vulnerabile în fața pandemiei provocate de coronavirus, s-a format echipa Europa. Credeți că solidaritatea va ajuta să depășim această criză?
I think it's the only way forward. We need to do this together. I think the slogan that might have been overused at some time at this time of the pandemic is that no one is safe until everyone is safe is extremely true when it comes to this. As long as the virus is out there, it will affect us all, even if it's in more remote parts in relation to where we are sitting. We can see that with the new virus that has been detected by the scientists in South Africa. This is going to be everywhere in whatever we do. So we really need to ensure that all populations have the access to vaccination so that we can protect ourselves and go forward with this.
Suedia este una dintre primele țări în care s-a înregistrat varianta Omicron în Uniunea Europeană. Ce urmează? Ce măsuri vor fi luate?
Well, so far we have recommendations for people who've been abroad to test themselves when they get back to Sweden, and that is regardless whether you've been vaccinated or not, to see if we can find these new variants early on and start tracing them. I don't know what we follow. What I've learned from this pandemic is that you can never really foresee what the next thing is going to be. It's been highly unpredictable. So the only thing I do hope is that we will be able to do this together, that we will not close borders, and that we will be able to share both science and vaccination and resources to fight this pandemic to the end.
Cum s-a reușit în Suedia să fie vaccinată aproape 80% din populație și la noi iată că este în jur de 30%?
Tricky questions, I would say, but I think that fundamentally it is because we have a population that trusts the authorities to a large extent. When our authorities, and particularly the one that are in charge of a certain, health issues and science, that they have a very high level of trust in the population. If they recommend us to get vaccinated, many people would follow their advice in that sense. And therefore, I think is why we have this kind of high numbers. It's also a question of peer pressure, I would assume, to a certain extent, that if all of us together jointly can do this, we can also perhaps get out on the other side of this crisis. And that is also helping us to get these kind of high numbers. But it's also, of course, a question of having resources and systems to set up to carry out the vaccinations in a broad way and quickly.
O altă mare deosebire într-un alt domeniu este faptul că Suedia reușește să recicleze 99% din deșeuri, în timp ce Republica Moldova este sub 1%. La noi aproape că nu există reciclare. Cum se întâmplă asta acolo?
I think it's also something that's really been embedded in our education for such a long time, that this is something that you actually do because you need to do it and because the entire society needs to help if you would like to safeguard our environment. And because we have the system that makes it easy to do so. If it's too complicated, people may not do it, but if it's as easy as you just sort your trash, it's easier to get people to actually do it. So in Sweden, in my kitchen in Sweden, I sort between glass, metal, plastic, two different kinds of plastics, soft plastics and hard plastics, and then you have the things that could fermentate and turn into biogas and things, and then you have the remainder of course batteries and bulbs and everything like that is also going separately, electronics. So that's what you do every day. It's a part of your routine, more or less. I was a bit surprised when I got here, actually, and we've been looking at the boxes and but where do we put our glass? And where do we put our plastic? So we've been trying to figure out systems to solve it also here, to be as helpful as possible. And I know here at the embassy we have the opportunity to also bring some of the certain things that we then ensure that they get to the right place going forward.
Sunteți aici împreună cu familia? Cum s-a adaptat familia, dacă este aici?
Yes, I'm very happy to be here with my family, at least part of it. I'm here with my husband and 2 out of 3 children. The third one, she's old enough to study in the UK, but she has been visiting us. We also brought a very energetic dog who's part of the family. And I think she's actually the one that has adapted most quickly. She really enjoys Moldova. It's a Jack Russell, and I see that walking around Chisinau is a very popular dog. So she has already a lot of friends when she's walking around. I think we have all adapted very well to Moldova. I'm not even sure you really needed to adapt. It's such a nice country to come to. My daughter, the youngest one, she's at school here and she has already many friends and she enjoys her time here as well.
Odată cu trecerea dumneavoastră aici, spuneți că v-ați schimbat unul dintre obiceiuri, iată, cu reciclarea deșeurilor. Ce alte obiceiuri obișnuite a trebuit să le schimbați dumneavoastră și membrii familiei?
In Sweden, of course, I was living in a much smaller house. Now I have the opportunity to roam around in a residence, and that's quite spacious, and that's a bit of a change for me to adapt to. And of course, coming into the role as an ambassador has been a lot of, that's something you have to work with a little bit. But for the family, and as a family, I think we haven't had to change so much. You have to go to the food stores and figure out what the different brands are and to find whatever is actually the right things to buy if you like to do the traditional Swedish cooking or something like that. But you figure that out fairly easy, and I think that you have everything you need here in Moldova. So it's not hard at all to come and live in Moldova, I have to say.
Unde o să petreceți Crăciunul? Că sunteți acolo aproape de țara lui Moș Crăciun și o să stați în Moldova?
Well, actually, I do hope that we'll be able to go home and celebrate Christmas with the rest of the family, including my daughter who's coming back from the UK, and to see my mother and my mother and father-in-law as well. They're getting older, so it's nice to be able to spend that kind of holidays together with the family and friends.
Care este primul cuvânt care vă vine în minte când spuneți Republica Moldova?
You get 2 strong women.
Moldova și Suedia au în comun?
Innovation.
Sărbătoarea din Moldova pe care o preferați, dacă ați reușit deja să petreceți aici vreo sărbătoare, cred că nu.
I haven't seen so many yet. Got here just after your National Day celebration and the Language Day, so I'm really looking forward to see more of them. I noticed that you have so many nice festivals during the autumn, whether it's for the potatoes or for the wine or for the other vegetables, and I do like this feeling, you know, of getting back to the ecological roots and see what you have from the agriculture. Yes.
Locul vizitat care v-a plăcut cel mai mult?
Oh, I have to say, since it's COVID time, it has to be nature, it has to be parks, because I haven't been able to go inside so many places.
So the residence.
Residence is nice, but I do love the Chișinău parks.
În limba română știți ceva? Ați reușit să învățați?
Mulțumesc. Bună ziua. A few more words of being polite, perhaps, but that's definitely on my to-do list. I really would be able to make an interview like this in Romanian before leaving.
Atunci o să ne vedem peste câțiva ani la un nou interviu.
Pressure is on.
Ok, și la final, dacă aveți un mesaj pentru locuitorii din Republica Moldova.
Well, that's also a difficult one, but there is a Chinese saying that says, if you like to travel fast, go alone. If you like to travel far, go together. So I would maybe make that as a plea. Do go together to build Moldova together, and you be sure that Team Europe and Sweden will be very happy to work with you on that journey.
Doamna ambasador, vă mulțumesc foarte mult pentru această discuție și vă doresc succes!
Mulțumesc!